Ravi had never planned to come back to the cabin before the end of summer. He had rented the small mountain place 2 years ago after his father passed away. The cabin was his father's dream home, built with care and love. It stood near a calm lake, surrounded by tall pine trees, quiet mornings, and the sound of birds. Ravi had left it under the care of the local HOA, thinking it would stay safe. He lived in the city now, working long hours at an office. He trusted the homeowners association to watch over his place. The head of the HOA was a woman named Karen. She was strict about rules, always sending messages about grass height, mailbox paint, or parking limits. Ravi had met her twice. Both times she talked about rules more than greetings. This summer, Ravi went on a work trip earlier than expected. But 2 weeks later, his project got canceled. Instead of sitting in his noisy apartment, he thought it would be nice to relax at the cabin for a few days. The air there was clean, and his father's old tools were still in the shed. It was a last-minute decision. He packed his small bag, filled the car with fuel, and started the long drive to the lake. The road was empty, the sky blue, and Ravi felt light for the first time in months. As he drove closer to the mountains, he smiled at the thought of morning coffee on the porch. He imagined the wooden floor creaking under his feet, the smell of pine mixing with coffee steam. He missed that peace. After 4 hours, he reached the quiet town near the lake. He stopped at a small store for milk and bread. The old shopkeeper recognized him and smiled. "Back early this year, Ravi," the old man said. "Yeah, surprise plan," Ravi replied with a grin. "I needed a break." "Well, the weather's been good. You'll have a fine time," the shopkeeper said. Ravi thanked him and drove to his cabin road. It was a narrow path covered with fallen leaves. As he got closer, something strange caught his eye. There were 3 cars parked near his cabin. He frowned. He only owned 1 car and no one was supposed to be there. At first he thought maybe the HOA had sent someone for maintenance. But there were no signs of repair work. 1 car was a red SUV, another a gray sedan, and the third a small blue car. The windows of the cabin were open and he could hear faint laughter. Ravi parked quietly by the trees and stepped out. He moved closer to the cabin gate and stopped. Music was playing inside. Not loud, but enough to hear the rhythm. He could also smell food cooking, something spicy and sweet. His heart began to race. He had not given anyone permission to stay in his cabin. Who were these people? He slowly walked toward the porch, noticing beer cans near the steps. That was enough to make him angry. His father had never allowed alcohol inside the cabin. It was a place of peace, not parties. He reached the door and knocked. The laughter stopped. After a moment, a woman opened the door. She looked surprised to see him. She was wearing sunglasses indoors and held a cup of coffee. "Can I help you?" she asked with a forced smile. Ravi stared at her. "Yes, this is my cabin. Who are you and what are you doing here?" Her face changed. "Excuse me? This cabin is under HOA supervision. You must be mistaken." Ravi frowned. "No, I'm not. My name is Ravi Singh. I own this place." Before she could answer, a man walked out from the living room holding a plate of food. He stopped when he saw Ravi. "What's going on?" he asked. The woman looked nervous. I think there's a misunderstanding," she said quickly. "He says he owns this cabin." The man gave her a confused look. "I thought this was your friend's place. You said it was a rental." Ravi's eyes widened. "Rental? Are you renting my cabin?" The woman took a step back. "Sir, please calm down. This can be discussed with the HOA. Karen handles all of that." Ravi clenched his fists but took a deep breath. "Fine. I'll call her now." He stepped aside and pulled out his phone. He had Karen's number saved from the old HOA emails. He dialed and she answered quickly. "Hello, this is Karen from Lakeview HOA, she said in a strict tone. "Karen, this is Ravi Singh. I came back to my cabin today and found strangers living inside. Can you explain what's going on?" There was a short silence. "Oh, Ravi, you should have informed us before coming. We have an HOA policy about surprise visits." Ravi's eyebrows furrowed. "Policy? I don't need to ask permission to visit my own property." Karen cleared her throat. "Well, we have been maintaining your property. I have arranged short-term guests to help cover upkeep costs. You are not using it, so it was better than leaving it empty." Ravi's voice grew firm. "You rented my cabin without permission?" "You are overreacting," Karen said sharply. "It's for the good of the community. We keep the place clean and the guests are respectful." Ravi looked at the beer cans again and the people staring at him through his own window. Respectful? My place looks like a mess. Karen raised her voice. Sir, I'm warning you to step away and let me handle this. If you make a scene, I'll have to call the police. That made Ravi pause. You're threatening me now? Not a threat, a reminder. You're causing a disturbance. I will contact the authorities if you don't leave, she snapped and ended the call. Ravi stood still, holding the phone. His heart was beating fast. The woman and the man inside looked uneasy. He turned to them and said quietly, You both need to leave now. The man nodded quickly, already gathering his jacket. The woman tried to speak, but Ravi's steady gaze made her stop. They walked out with their things and hurried to their cars. Within minutes, both cars drove off, leaving the place silent again. Ravi stood on his porch looking around. The flower pots were broken and cigarette butts were near the steps. Inside, the furniture was moved and blankets were thrown on the sofa. He felt anger but also confusion. How could the HOA do this without asking him? He picked up one of the empty glasses from the table and noticed a printed paper under it. It was a short-term rental receipt with Karen's signature on it. She had been renting his cabin for months. As he stared at the paper, he heard a car approaching. When he turned, he saw a white SUV stop at the gate. Karen stepped out holding her phone. Her face was red and she started shouting before even reaching him. Ravi, what are you doing here? You can't just show up and kick out my guests. She yelled. Ravi took a deep breath. My guests? You mean strangers you invited into my home? Karen raised her phone. I told you to wait. You are trespassing now. I'm calling the police. Ravi couldn't believe what he was hearing. He stood there frozen as she started dialing. The peaceful cabin his father built now echoed with her angry voice. And as Karen screamed into her phone, Ravi knew this was just the beginning of a fight he never expected. Ravi stood near the porch as Karen shouted into her phone. Her face was red and her hands shook with anger. She looked like someone trying to win a fight before it even began. Ravi stayed calm, holding the rental paper he had found inside. He knew she had no right to rent his cabin. The sound of sirens broke the silence of the lake road. Within minutes, a police car arrived. 2 officers stepped out. One was a tall man with a calm face, the other a younger woman taking notes. They looked around the area, then at Karen and Ravi. Ma'am, what seems to be the problem? The tall officer asked. Karen pointed at Ravi. Officer, this man broke into this cabin and forced my guests to leave. He's trespassing. Ravi almost laughed. Officer, that's my cabin. My name is Ravi Singh. I own this place. She's the HOA manager and she's been renting my property without permission. The officers looked at each other. The young woman opened her notebook. Sir, do you have any proof that this property belongs to you? Ravi nodded and took out his wallet. He showed his ID and property documents, which he had kept in a folder in his car. The officer took a look, reading the address and ownership details. Karen folded her arms tightly. He may own it on paper, but HOA has control over property maintenance. We have an agreement that allows us to rent unused homes for community benefit. The officer raised an eyebrow. Do you have a copy of that agreement, ma'am? Karen hesitated. It's part of our internal records. I can get it from the office. Ravi handed the rental receipt to the officer. You can see her signature right here. She rented this place to strangers without even telling me. Look at the date. It's been going on for months. The officer examined the paper and looked back at Karen. Ma'am, did you authorize this rental personally? Karen's face turned pale. Well, I manage the HOA. Sometimes I allow short stays to help with maintenance funds. That's not your call to make without the owner's consent, the officer said firmly. Karen's tone changed. Officer, he's overreacting. I was doing what's best for the community. We can solve this privately. Ravi stepped forward. No, we won't solve this privately. You've been using my property for your own profit, and when I came back early, you called the police on me. The officer sighed. All right, let's calm down. Ma'am, there's no sign of trespassing here. The owner has legal documents. Unless you can show a contract giving HOA ownership or control, you have no grounds to accuse him. Karen crossed her arms but stayed silent. The young officer wrote a few notes. Sir, she said to Ravi, we'll file a report. You can contact your lawyer or file a complaint with the HOA board. For now, it's clear you have the right to stay in your property. Karen turned away, muttering under her breath. This is not over. When the police left, Ravi walked toward her. You've been lying to me in the community. Why? Karen looked at him with cold eyes. You think you can just show up and accuse me? I've worked hard to keep this neighborhood clean and valuable. Some of us have to make decisions that others don't understand. By renting someone else's property? Ravi asked. She gave a short laugh. You never come here. You don't care about this place. I took care of your cabin when you didn't. You should be thankful it didn't fall apart. Ravi shook his head. You used it like a hotel. You made money from my home. Karen leaned closer. You better drop this, Ravi. If you try to make trouble, I can find a dozen violations against you. The HOA can fine you, block your access, even report you for disturbing peace. Ravi met her gaze calmly. You can try, but I'm not scared. Karen glared at him and turned away, walking back to her SUV. She started her engine and drove off, leaving a cloud of dust behind. Ravi stood for a moment, thinking about what to do next. He spent the rest of the afternoon cleaning the cabin. There were dirty dishes, stained rugs, and broken items. He found more rental receipts hidden in a drawer, all signed by Karen. Some names were repeated, showing regular guests. He felt his father's photo watching from the wall. It made him feel both sad and angry. His father had built this cabin with his hands, every corner filled with care. Now strangers had slept here, partied, and left a mess. That night, Ravi sat by the window drinking tea. The moon shone on the lake and the air was cool. He opened his laptop and searched for the HOA's website. There, under Community Rentals, he found photos of his cabin listed as Lakeview Guest Retreat. The listing said, managed by HOA President Karen Miller. Ravi took screenshots of everything. He knew he needed proof before confronting her again. The next morning, he visited the HOA office. It was a small building near the entrance of the neighborhood. A young receptionist smiled as he entered. Good morning, sir. How can I help you? I'm here to see Karen, Ravi said. She's not in today, the receptionist replied. She had an emergency meeting in town. Ravi noticed a file cabinet behind her labeled Property Rentals. He smiled politely. Can I leave a note for her? Of course, she said, handing him a piece of paper. While writing, Ravi's eyes moved toward the cabinet. A few folders were slightly open. He could see printed rental contracts, and one had his cabin's address on top. He didn't touch anything, but he noted the details carefully in his mind. After leaving the office, he called his friend Imran, who worked as a property lawyer in the city. He explained everything. Imran said, This is serious, Ravi. If she's been renting your property without permission, that's illegal. Gather all proof, documents, photos, anything showing she benefited from it. Then we'll file a complaint with both the HOA board and the local authority. Ravi thanked him and felt a bit more confident. He spent the rest of the day repairing things around the cabin and taking pictures of the damage. In the evening, while checking the shed, he noticed something strange behind the old tool bench. There was a small cardboard box with envelopes inside. They were marked with Karen's handwriting. Each envelope had cash inside, labeled by month. On top, a note said, Cabin Guest Funds. Ravi stared at the box in disbelief. This was clear proof that Karen had been collecting rent directly in cash. He placed everything carefully in a bag. As he stepped out, he heard the crunch of tires on the gravel road. Another car stopped near the gate. It wasn't Karen this time. It was a middle-aged couple with suitcases. They smiled at him. Hello, are you the owner? The man asked. Yes, Ravi said. Can I help you? The woman looked confused. We booked this cabin for 3 nights through the HOA website. Karen confirmed our stay this morning. Ravi took a slow breath. I'm sorry, but this cabin isn't available for rent. You've been misled. The couple looked at each other, worried. The man said, We already paid. She said it was ready for us. Ravi nodded. I understand. You should contact the police or your card company to report this. Karen has been renting out my cabin without permission. They looked shocked but thanked him and left. When they drove away, Ravi locked the gate and sat on the steps. His anger was now mixed with determination. Karen had crossed every line. He looked toward the town lights in the distance and whispered, You picked the wrong person to cheat, Karen. The next morning, he would visit the police again with all the evidence. The fight was far from over, but this time Ravi was ready. The next morning, the sunlight fell through the tall pine trees and the lake was still. But inside Ravi's heart there was no peace. He had barely slept thinking about everything that had happened. Karen's lies, the strangers renting his cabin, the hidden box of cash, it all made his blood boil. Ravi woke early. packed the box of envelopes, printed photos of the cabin's damage, and placed the rental receipts in a folder. He knew this time he needed to handle things the right way. He wasn't going to let Karen twist the truth again. He drove to the small police station in town. It was a brick building near the grocery store. Inside, the same tall officer from yesterday was at the front desk. He looked up and nodded. "Morning, sir. Back again?" "Yes," Ravi said firmly. "I have proof now. The HOA manager, Karen Miller, has been renting my cabin for months and keeping the money. I found cash, receipts, and even new guests came yesterday who said they booked through her." The officer raised his eyebrows. "You found guests again?" "Yes, they said Karen confirmed their stay this morning." The officer sighed and gestured toward a small office. "Come in. Let's take your statement properly." Ravi sat down and placed everything on the table. The officer carefully opened the envelopes, counted the money, and looked at the dates written on each one. "This looks serious," he said. "We'll need to verify her financial records with the HOA. I also have screenshots of her online listings," Ravi said, showing the printed photos from the HOA website. "She listed my cabin under Lakeview Guest Retreat." The officer nodded slowly. "All right. We'll start by contacting the HOA office. We'll ask her to explain these transactions. You might need to speak with the HOA board too." Ravi thanked him and left. On the way back, he felt a mix of anger and relief. The truth was coming out. That afternoon, he visited the HOA building again. This time, several board members were sitting in the small conference room. They were older men and women who looked serious and calm. Ravi had already called ahead and requested a meeting. Karen was there too, sitting at the end of the table with a forced smile. When Ravi entered, her eyes narrowed. "Ravi, this is not necessary," she said quickly. "We can solve this without dragging the whole board into it." Ravi ignored her and greeted the others politely. "Thank you for meeting with me. I know you're busy, but I have something very important to discuss." The chairman, an elderly man named Mr. Patel, adjusted his glasses. "Go ahead, Mr. Singh. What is the issue?" Ravi placed the folder on the table. "Karen Miller, the HOA president, has been renting my cabin to guests without my permission. She collected money directly, used my property, and even listed it online as an HOA-managed rental." The room grew quiet. Ravi handed out copies of the rental receipts, the cash photos, and screenshots from the HOA website. The board members studied them carefully. Mr. Patel frowned. "Karen, these receipts have your signature. Is this true?" Karen's smile faded. "Those were temporary arrangements. The funds went toward maintenance. We all benefit when properties look active and cared for." A woman on the board shook her head. "That doesn't explain the cash. The rules are clear. No property can be rented without the owner's written consent." Karen looked nervous now. "I admit I may have bent a few rules, but I did it for the community. We needed funds for road repairs and landscaping. I didn't keep anything for myself," Ravi spoke calmly. "Then explain this." He placed one of the envelopes on the table. "Your handwriting. Your initials. The note says cabin guest funds. If it was for the community, why was the money hidden in my shed and not in the HOA account?" Karen froze. The room was silent again. Mr. Patel looked at her with disappointment. "Karen, this is a serious accusation. We'll need to review the HOA financial records immediately." Karen tried to smile again, but her voice trembled. "You're misunderstanding. I was just holding the cash until the books were updated." Ravi leaned forward. "Then why were new guests sent to my cabin yesterday after the police told you to stop?" The board members exchanged looks. Mr. Patel finally spoke. "Karen, I think you should step out for a moment while we discuss this privately." Karen stood up quickly. "You can't just push me out. I've been running this community for 6 years." "Then you should know better than to use someone's property for personal gain," another member said sharply. Karen glared at Ravi as she left the room. When the door closed, Mr. Patel sighed. "Mr. Singh, thank you for bringing this to our attention. It appears there's more going on here than we realized. We'll cooperate fully with the police," Ravi nodded. "I just want what's fair. My cabin isn't a hotel. It's my father's legacy. I won't let anyone use it for their own profit." Mr. Patel smiled gently. "I understand. Leave the rest to us for now. We'll schedule a full review of her activities." Ravi left the meeting feeling lighter. The board had seen the truth with their own eyes. But he also knew Karen would not give up easily. That evening he returned to the cabin. The sky was turning orange and the lake shimmered with light. As he walked up the porch steps, he saw something strange again. A white paper was pinned to his door. He pulled it down and read it. It was a notice from the HOA signed by Karen. It said he was fined for unauthorized occupancy and property disturbance. Ravi shook his head and smiled bitterly. She's still trying. Just then a car pulled up behind him. It was the young officer from earlier. She waved and stepped out. Mr. Singh, we followed up on your case. The HOA's financial records show missing funds. Karen has been moving cash into her personal account. Ravi's eyes widened. So it's confirmed? Yes, she said. The board called us after your meeting. They found more rental listings linked to her. Looks like she's been doing this with several homes, not just yours. Ravi felt a wave of satisfaction. Thank you, officer. I appreciate it, she nodded. She'll be questioned soon. For now, keep your evidence safe. You might need to testify if this goes to court. After she left, Ravi went inside the cabin. He sat near the window again, looking at the quiet lake. The place finally felt peaceful, but he knew this wasn't the end. The next morning, word spread around the neighborhood. Neighbors started visiting Ravi, curious about what happened. An old man named Robert came first. Ravi, I heard Karen's in trouble. Is it true? Yes, Ravi said. She rented my cabin without asking me. The police are looking into it. Robert shook his head. I'm not surprised. She's been bossing everyone for years. I bet she's been taking advantage of others too. By the afternoon, 3 more neighbors came, each with a story of their own. One said Karen charged them extra for parking permits that were supposed to be free. Another said she collected cash for repairs that never happened. Ravi listened carefully. It became clear that Karen's behavior had been a problem for a long time, but no one had dared to speak up. Now that he had taken a stand, others found their voices too. That evening, Ravi received a call from Mr. Patel. Ravi, thank you for your patience. We've suspended Karen from her position until the investigation ends. The police have taken her financial files for review. Ravi thanked him and hung up. As he stepped outside, the cool night breeze touched his face. The stars reflected on the lake and the cabin lights glowed softly. He felt proud, not just for protecting his father's cabin, but for standing up against someone who thought power meant control. Still, a small thought lingered in his mind. Karen was not the type to walk away quietly, and somewhere in town as the investigation began, Karen was already planning her next move. Days passed after Karen's suspension, but the tension around the quiet lake community only grew stronger. Ravi tried to focus on fixing his cabin and returning it to how it used to be. He cleaned the floors, repainted the porch, and even planted new flowers where the old pots were broken. Yet every time he looked at the gate, he half expected to see Karen's white SUV appear again. The neighbors talked about the situation every day. Some supported Ravi completely, while others stayed silent, afraid of getting involved. Everyone knew Karen had controlled the HOA for years. She decided who got fined, who got praised, and whose complaints were ignored. Her sudden fall shocked many people, but some still believed she would come back. One morning, as Ravi swept the porch, his phone buzzed. It was a message from Mr. Patel, the HOA chairman. Message: Ravi, please come to the community hall at 4 p.m. Karen has requested to meet the board again. She claims to have new evidence. Ravi frowned. New evidence? What could she possibly have? He replied, confirming he would come. At 4 p.m., he arrived at the hall. The small wooden room was filled with board members and a few residents who wanted to listen. Karen was there too, wearing a neat blue jacket and holding a folder. She looked calm, but her eyes were sharp. Thank you for coming, Mr. Patel said, looking between them. Karen has asked for a chance to present her side before we take any further action. Karen stood and smiled politely. First, I want to say I respect this community. Everything I did was to improve it. I never meant to harm anyone. Ravi stayed quiet, watching her carefully. Karen continued. Yes, I rented Ravi's cabin, but I did it under the impression that he had abandoned the property. The HOA records show no visit for more than a year, and there were complaints about the place looking empty. I took steps to protect it. Ravi stood. Protecting it doesn't mean turning it into a business. You collected cash in secret and hid it in my shed. Karen raised her hand. Please let me finish. The cash you found was part of an emergency maintenance fund. I planned to report it once the HOA budget was updated. Mr. Patel looked doubtful. Karen, the police already checked your accounts. Several deposits match the same dates as those cash collections. Karen smiled again. Those deposits were donations from friends, not cabin rent. Ravi almost laughed. Donations? Then why did guests show up at my door with bookings and confirmation from you? Karen's smile disappeared. Those people misunderstood. I offered them trial stays to test our new community rental system. The room filled with quiet whispers. Ravi took out his folder and placed printed screenshots on the table. Here's your listing online, Karen. You use the name Lakeview Guest Retreat. It includes my cabin's photos, and the number listed is your personal phone. The whispers grew louder. Mr. Patel leaned forward. Karen, this is serious. This clearly shows you used HOA property information for personal gain. Karen's face turned red, but she didn't give up. You all think I'm the villain, but I've kept this community running. Without me, the roads wouldn't be fixed. The lawns wouldn't be maintained, and our reputation would be gone. A board member said quietly, That doesn't give you the right to steal. Karen looked around the room, realizing she was losing control. You'll regret this, she said suddenly. All of you. Especially you, Ravi. You came here and turned everyone against me. Ravi met her gaze calmly. You did that yourself, Mr. Patel stood. That's enough. The board has decided to support the investigation. Karen, you are officially removed from your position until further notice. You are not allowed to manage or access any HOA property. Karen's hands trembled and she quickly gathered her papers. You think this is over? She said coldly. You have no idea who you're dealing with. Then she walked out, slamming the door. The meeting ended quietly. Ravi thanked the board and went back to his cabin. But as night fell, he couldn't shake the uneasy feeling that Karen wouldn't stop. Later that evening, as he sat on the porch, a light flickered near the road. A car was parked under the trees. It wasn't moving, but the engine was running. Ravi watched it for a few minutes. When he stood to look closer, the headlights turned off and the car drove away. The next morning, Ravi found a new problem. His mailbox was full of papers, fake notices claiming his cabin violated HOA maintenance rules. Each one had Karen's name scratched out, replaced with temporary officer. He knew it was her. He went straight to Mr. Patel's house to show him. She's still trying to cause trouble, Ravi said. Mr. Patel sighed. Ignore these for now. The board will send an official notice to the residents that Karen no longer represents the HOA. She's angry, but her power is gone. Still, Ravi didn't feel safe. That evening, he installed new locks on the doors and put a small camera near the porch. He didn't want any more surprises. 2 nights later, the surprise came anyway. It was past midnight when Ravi woke up to a sound outside. At first, he thought it was an animal, but then he heard footsteps on the gravel. He got up quietly and looked out the window. Someone was near the shed holding a flashlight. Ravi grabbed his phone and stepped outside. Who's there? He called. The flashlight turned off. A shadow moved behind the shed. Ravi approached slowly, keeping his phone ready. I'm calling the police, he warned. Then he heard a car door slam. The same white SUV sped off down the road. The next morning, he checked the camera footage. It showed Karen sneaking near the shed. She had tried to open it but ran when she heard him. Ravi sent the video to the police. That afternoon, the young officer visited him again. We got your footage, she said. We've already contacted Karen. She said she was retrieving her belongings, but we know that's not true. She's under investigation for trespassing and fraud. Ravi nodded. I just want her to stop. This place has been through enough. The officer smiled kindly. You did the right thing by reporting her. Many people would have stayed quiet. But you stood up for yourself and for others she hurt. After she left, Ravi sat on the porch again. The lake looked peaceful once more and the sun shone bright through the pine trees. He finally felt the calm he had missed for so long. Later that evening, a few neighbors stopped by. Robert brought a small basket of fruits. You did good, Ravi, he said. People were scared of her for years. Now everyone feels free. Another neighbor added, You should think about joining the new HOA board. We need someone honest, Ravi smiled. Maybe after all this is over. As night came, the community lights glowed softly around the lake. For the first time in months, the air felt light, and the sound of laughter came from nearby homes. Karen's power was gone, and peace slowly returned to Lakeview. But in town, Karen sat alone in her car looking at the lights across the lake. Her phone buzzed with messages from an unknown number. She typed one reply and whispered to herself, "This isn't the end." She started her engine and drove away, her face hidden by the darkness. Ravi didn't know it yet, but Karen still had one last move left to play. Ravi woke to the calm sound of birds near the lake. The early morning air was crisp, and the sun reflected on the water, painting golden streaks across the cabin windows. For the first time in weeks, he felt the kind of peace his father had always talked about. But he also knew Karen was not finished. Her threat still lingered in his mind. He spent the morning repairing the last broken fence near the property line. Neighbors waved as they passed by, offering smiles and small greetings. Word had spread that Ravi had stood up to Karen, and the community slowly felt safer. He packed away his tools and sat on the porch with a cup of tea, listening to the gentle sound of the lake. Just as he was enjoying the quiet, a car approached from the main road. Ravi noticed it immediately. The white SUV, familiar and unwelcome. Karen stepped out. Her expression was different this time. Instead of shouting, she looked serious, almost calculating. Ravi's heart raced, but he stayed calm. "Karen, you've caused enough trouble," he said firmly. "What do you want now?" Karen smiled faintly. "I just want to talk. Let's handle this peacefully." Ravi narrowed his eyes. "After everything? You're under investigation. You've been suspended from the HOA. You've trespassed. I don't see anything peaceful here." Karen walked closer to the porch but kept her hands visible. "Ravi, I know I made mistakes, but I did what I thought was best for the community. I never wanted to hurt you personally." Ravi leaned against the railing. "You collected cash in secret. You sent guests to my home without my permission. You even tried to threaten the HOA board. That's not a mistake, that's theft and fraud." Karen's gaze softened for a moment, then hardened again. "I admit my methods were wrong, but I also know the HOA has flaws. People complain, funds are wasted, and no one takes responsibility. I tried to fix things before anyone else noticed." Ravi shook his head. "You don't fix things by taking what isn't yours. That's not leadership. That's control." Karen hesitated. She looked at the lake, then back at him. "I suppose you're right," she said quietly. "I let power get the better of me. I thought I could handle everything alone." Ravi stayed silent, waiting for her to continue. "I've spoken to the police," Karen said. "I'll cooperate fully. I'll return every cent, and I'll make sure the guests who booked my fake listings are reimbursed. I don't want to lose everything." Ravi studied her carefully. He could see she was serious, at least for the moment. "Then start by telling the truth to the board and the police. No more tricks, no more hiding money, no more threats." Karen nodded slowly. "I will. You've taught me a lesson I won't forget." Ravi took a deep breath. "This cabin is not a hotel. It's my father's legacy, and it will stay that way." Karen took a step back and looked around the property. "You've taken good care of it. I should have respected that from the start." Ravi felt a sense of closure beginning to form. For weeks, he had been worried about surprises, threats, and damage. Now it seemed Karen was finally accepting responsibility. The police called later that afternoon. The young officer came to Ravi's cabin. "Karen has signed statements admitting she misused HOA funds and rented properties without consent," she said. "She's agreed to reimburse all affected owners and has turned over financial records." Ravi nodded, relieved. "Thank you for helping. I just want the community to be safe again." The officer smiled. "You did the right thing. Standing up to someone like her isn't easy. Now the HOA can restore trust with the residents." That evening, Ravi walked down to the lake. The sky was painted with orange and pink as the sun set. He dipped his hands in the cool water and felt a weight lift from his shoulders. The cabin was his again, truly and completely. Neighbors began arriving one by one. They brought small gifts, baked treats, and kind words. Robert, the older man who had first spoken to him about Karen, smiled warmly. "Ravi, you've done more than protect your cabin. You've shown the community that honesty matters." Ravi smiled back. It wasn't easy, but someone had to take a stand. A few children ran along the path to the lake, laughing as their parents watched. The sound reminded Ravi of simpler times, of summers spent with his father fixing the cabin and fishing by the water. The memories made him feel grounded. Karen's SUV was gone for the last time. The neighbors confirmed that she was complying with the police and the HOA's decisions. She would no longer have access to the community. Ravi felt a wave of relief knowing the threats were over. The next morning, Ravi visited the board again. He presented all his evidence, including receipts, photos, cash, and the camera footage of Karen trespassing. The board members reviewed everything carefully. Mr. Patel finally spoke. "Ravi, thanks. To your diligence, we can restore confidence in the HOA. The residents can now trust that their properties are safe." Ravi nodded. "That's all I want. The cabin and this neighborhood deserve honesty." The board decided to implement stricter rules for rentals and property access. Any future rentals would require written consent from owners and transparency in funds. Ravi felt proud. His actions had not only protected his own cabin but had helped prevent future problems for others. Weeks later, the cabin felt alive again. Ravi planted a small vegetable garden, repaired the old dock by the lake, and invited neighbors to small, informal gatherings. People laughed, shared stories, and felt comfortable without fear of Karen's interference. One afternoon, Ravi sat on the porch, sipping lemonade. He looked at the calm lake, the tall pines, and the clear sky. The cabin was more than a house. It was peace, memories, and hard-earned safety. A neighbor called out, "Ravi, come see this." Ravi went down to the lake and saw a group of children playing with a small wooden boat he had built for them. They laughed as they floated it on the water, careful not to tip it. Ravi's heart felt full. He realized something important. Standing up for what is right is never easy. Sometimes it takes courage to face people who think they are above rules. But honesty, patience, and determination can bring justice, even when the situation seems overwhelming. As the sun set, Ravi returned to the cabin. He locked the doors, checked the windows, and sat on the porch one last time that evening. He thought about the journey, from the shock of strangers in his home to facing Karen, dealing with the HOA, and finally reclaiming his cabin. He smiled, knowing his father would be proud. The cabin was safe, the community was safer, and Ravi had proven that standing for what is right can make a real difference. Far away in town, Karen knew her power was gone. She would have to face consequences for her actions. But Ravi didn't dwell on her anymore. He focused on what mattered: peace, honesty, and the life he wanted to live. For the first time in a long while, the cabin felt like home again. Ravi closed his eyes and whispered to himself, "This place is ours, and it always will be." The lake glowed under the stars, calm and quiet. The wind rustled the trees softly as if celebrating the return of peace. Ravi leaned back, breathing deeply, and finally let himself relax. The nightmare of Karen's lies, secrets, and threats was over. He was home.